Hey everyone.
Hey guys.
Welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor video. Today we're doing a job market update for the beginning of the year. So basically we contacted all the companies we work with. We work with 13 different companies right now and got information from all of them about the current job market, how 2025 was, their outlook for 2026, along with job numbers and any other insight that they were able to give us. So Whitney's going to introduce us and then we'll jump in and get started talking about the job market.
Hey guys, thanks for those of you that are tuning in live. My name is Whitney and this is Jared. We're both traveling doctors of physical therapy. We started traveling over 10 years ago when we were new grad physical therapists. And for the last 8 years or so, we've been mentoring and educating fellow travel therapists on how to get started and how to be successful in the travel therapy industry. We have been doing these job market updates since 2019. We try to do them every few months to give you guys some perspective on what's happening with the job market. Particularly, this is helpful information for those of you that are thinking about getting started as travel therapists to know whether now is a good time to get into the industry. And it can also be helpful for those of you that are current traveling to get an idea of what the trends are, what the recruiters and the staffing companies are seeing, and kind of, what you can anticipate for your upcoming job searches. So as Jared mentioned, we gathered data from the 13 different agencies that we partner with. And this information came from some of them from recruiters, some of them from managers within the staffing agency, and some of them from the owners or the CEOs of the companies themselves. So we have a really good variety of information and stats for you guys as well. So hopefully this will be helpful. If you are tuning in live on either Instagram or Facebook, we would love if you'd say hello in the comments and let us know. If you have any questions about what we're talking about tonight or just about travel therapy in general, you can feel free to leave those in the comments. And then shout out to those of you that will listen later on our podcast or watch on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, so now we are almost at the end of January and the job market has picked up quite a bit. So we talked last video about the beginning of the year lull that is often seen where basically things kind of grind to a halt at the end of the year, beginning of the year. There's not a whole lot of people working. There's not a lot of people getting placed in jobs during that time. A lot of managers and companies that kind of take time off during that time of the year. So all that now is gone. I think the market's picked up quite a bit. Things are kind of firing on all cylinders right now. So we wanted to wait a little bit into the beginning of the year, closer to the end of January, to just see how the rebound and everything went. So everything's going well now. Talk about some of the job numbers. I think that's probably what a lot of you guys care about.
Yep, and then real quick before we get into the numbers, a couple quick announcements. It's almost time for the APTA CSM conference, which is in like 2.5 weeks, I think. So for those of you PTs, PTAs, PT students that are going to be in Anaheim at the CSM conference, we would love to see you there. This is probably our 6th year or so.
7th, I think.
Going, and so we'll be in the exhibit hall. We're going to be at a booth there with one of the companies that we work with, AMN Healthcare. We don't work for AMN Healthcare, but we've taken jobs with them in the past, and we've partnered with them to go to some conferences. So you can find us there at their booth, and you can come and talk with us about travel therapy. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer them for you. We'd love to meet you in person, especially if you've been following us for a while or we've chatted online before, but you want to meet in person, come see us at the booth. We're going to be at booth number 707 with AMN Healthcare. And then also we're going to be hosting a meetup. We've done this for the last several years. We're going to have a travel therapy meetup. It's usually pretty fun. We usually have anywhere from like 50 to 100 travel therapists come. And then also those of you that are thinking about getting into travel therapy are welcome as well. We do anticipate a big turnout, and our capacity at the venue is 75 people. So for right now, we are only taking RSVPs from PT and PTA clinicians. And we're doing a wait list for DPT students. So there's some links that I've shared on our social media and also to our email subscribers to get RSVP'd for that. If you don't see the link, just send us a message and we'll send you the link so you can get RSVP'd. We can't wait to see you guys there.
Yep. All right, so for the job numbers, we say this every time, but there's a pretty big range. And the reason there's a big range is because we work with small companies, medium-sized companies, big companies, and we recommend that you guys do as well. It's good to have a variety of different size companies because they have different opportunities, they have different benefits, can vary quite a bit.
Yeah, and so, the question that we ask all the companies is, what are the current job numbers that you have available for each discipline, PT, OT, speech, CODA, and PTA?
Yep. So the lower end numbers are pretty much always smaller companies. Smaller companies have less jobs, but they have usually higher pay And, sometimes they'll have exclusive contracts and things, but in general, smaller companies are going to have less jobs but higher pay, and bigger companies are going to have more jobs but lower pay. And that kind of makes sense as you get more into the industry. So these ranges, smaller companies are usually going to have less and bigger companies are going to have more. So for PT right now, anywhere between 200 and 1,300 open jobs. The majority of companies are between 500 and 1,000. For OT, anywhere between 100 and 300 open jobs, with the majority being between 100 and 250. For SLP, there's anywhere between 100 and 700 open jobs, with the majority being between 100 and 300. And then PTA, 80 to 250, with the majority being right around 200. And then for CODAs, 50 to 175, with the majority being around 100 open jobs. So wide range, but the majority are kind of in the middle. And like I said, the smaller companies are almost always on that lower end, and the bigger companies are almost always on the higher end.
Yeah. And this has been pretty steady and pretty consistent. We keep track of all the numbers every time we do one of these updates, and these numbers have stayed pretty steady from about 2024 through 2025 and now into 2026. So as you can see, there's a lot more opportunities across the board with all companies for physical therapists. That's pretty much the trend we've been seeing ever since after COVID, after the pandemic. There's pretty much been the highest demand for physical therapists. We have a lot of the companies reporting now that in the last couple of years, there's actually a higher demand than there used to be for PTAs. And the big reason for that is that there's just a general push to get physical therapy clinicians into these facilities. And so sometimes the facilities, even if they can't find a PT, will take a PTA. So we're seeing really good numbers for PTs and PTAs, still fairly strong for OT and SLP, with the range for most companies being between 100 and 300 jobs. Just not quite as many as PT. And as always, CODA is pretty much our lowest number of available jobs. So if you are a CODA, you do have to be pretty open and flexible on which states and settings you're willing to work in. Most often you're going to see skilled nursing and schools for CODAs, and a lot of needs more in California than any of the other states. So if you do want to be a travel CODA, I would recommend getting your California license. But for most other disciplines, PT, OT, speech, and PTA, you have a really good variety of jobs all across the country. But for, like we said, for OT, SLP, and PTA, just a little bit less than PT.
Yeah, and that's a good point when you brought up about the some companies are willing to take PTAs now because PTs are in such high demand. So there are so many open PT jobs and not that many PT travelers that some of these facilities that have open PT jobs sitting for months and months at a time, they just try to make do with the PTA. So some of the job openings are being trickled down essentially to the PTA market, which has been really good for the PTAs that are traveling. And for anybody that started traveling in the last 4 or 5 years, you probably think, watching our videos and stuff, like, oh man, the PT market's just always so great, and PTs always get paid the most. But that's not the way it used to be before 2020. So actually before 2020, OTs, SLPs often had more jobs open and got paid more than PTs did. And when we were doing these job market updates back then, or we were looking at our own situations, we were kind of jealous back then of the OTs and SLPs, but that has completely shifted now after 2020. So just because it's this way right now doesn't mean it's always going to be this way. And just because it has been for the last 4 or 5 years, that could definitely change in the coming years.
Yeah, I would say OT, I think it was usually, OT was a little bit behind PT, but I think there was a time where SLP was on top, where SLP was in the highest demand of any. And they still are in high demand, especially in schools. But I think the biggest shift that we've seen, and we've talked about this before in our past updates, is since COVID, a lot of therapists left the outpatient industry. There's a lot of things happening with the outpatient industry where people are leaving private practices and they're getting burnt out and they're not wanting to work in that setting anymore. And so there's a ton of needs in outpatient physical therapy now for travelers where there didn't used to be. So that's the biggest increase. The other thing that we're seeing is just as we get on in the years, the baby boomer generation is coming up in their aging in the population. So they're needing a lot more therapy services, particularly, physical therapy services, because they're debilitating physically. So yeah, just a huge need for PTs. So we've said it before, we'll say it again. If you are a physical therapist, now is such a good time to get into travel therapy if it is something you're interested in, whether you're a current clinician or you're a new grad that's thinking about getting into travel therapy. As a PT, you're gonna have a lot of job options.
Yep. So then we asked, just in general, asked all the same companies, how's the therapy job market overall for 2025, just to get an overview. And pretty much all of them said that overall is a very strong job market, lots of demand, particularly for PTs and PTAs. Still a lot of staffing shortages in facilities and need for travelers, like we've talked about. That's particularly the case for outpatient, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But recruiters report difficulty in finding candidates. They need more therapists, lots of jobs open, sitting for a long time. And we've seen this more and more, like on our job list. There's some jobs that will sit open for 2 or 3 months or even more. So yeah, if you can be more picky than ever as a PT. There's just a lot of facilities that need therapists right now. So yeah, it was a really good market for 2025. And I think pretty much all the agencies agree that going into 2026, there's not going to be a whole lot of changes. Things will pretty much remain about the same with a lot of demand for therapists.
Yeah, and that thing that Jared mentioned about travel jobs sitting open longer, that is new. When we first started traveling in 2015, these jobs moved so fast. You had to hop on the job right away as soon as it was posted, and within a couple of days, it was often closed. And that is still the case quite often with really popular locations, right? So if you see an amazing job pop up in Denver or San Diego, those jobs are still going quick. But a lot of the jobs just in, middle America, cities that you haven't heard of might be sitting open for a really long time.
Yep.
And that does leave some room for some negotiation quite often if you're the person who's like, you know what, I am willing to go to that place for a certain price, right? Or, maybe you can negotiate something else that's not necessarily pay related, but more time off or whatever it is that you need. Maybe
certain schedule or something.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a good thing for therapists. There's a high demand. Jobs are sitting open longer. It means you can be a little bit more picky, but it just depends on the job. It depends on the location. But that was interesting to see.
Yep.
And along those lines, so we asked them, like Jared said, for 2026, what do you anticipate? And this is really important for those of you guys coming to the market right now. So they anticipate a continued strong job market with high demand for therapists, particularly they say in rural locations. And that's kind of always the case, right? Like they definitely need more folks in rural locations. Again, kind of middle America, cities you haven't heard of. They also expect to see a high demand for travel therapists to continue to increase, as I kind of talked about with the aging populations and staffing shortages across the country. So there's really no slowing down this train. Some of them threw out some stats, like they were anticipating about like a 10% increase year over year in the need for therapists just in general. So it's still, we're still very valued and in demand. So if you were concerned about getting started with travel, say if you had any travel nursing friends, right? Like the nursing trends are quite different than the therapy trends right now. The nursing demands have slowed down since after COVID. And so some people in that space will say like, oh, travel's dead. It's not a good time to be a traveler. Not the case at all for therapists. Still very strong, still a very good time. They don't see it slowing down anytime soon. There's no indications that it would.
Yeah. One thing to mention about that too with the nursing thing is, yeah, if you go to like some of the nursing forums and groups right now, they're very, very down on travel. And we kind of predicted that something like this would happen. And there was a time period there in 2020, 2021, where there was a lot of therapists that were like, I'm a travel therapist, I don't make any money, these nurses make all the money, I should go to nursing school. And there were some therapists that did go to nursing school to be travel nurses. And it was a predictable crash. Like this wasn't going to be sustainable, these crazy pay rates that they were getting. So, just keep in mind that a lot of things are cyclical. A lot of things are just temporary. Any time in the future when something crazy like that happens again, just remember that this is not forever. And we just went right back to where we were. And in some cases, the nursing market is worse than it was pre-pandemic. So they actually had like this massive overshoot and then it's dropped below baseline. So, situations where some other discipline's making more money than you or they have more job options than you and you get all upset about it, just keep in mind that a lot of that stuff is temporary. And another thing to think about with the job market. So if you are new to travel therapy, you don't really understand all the stuff we're talking about, think of the job market kind of like the real estate market. So there's buyer's market and there's seller's markets, right? It's the same thing for travel jobs. Like, a buyer's market would be, say, when a lot of therapists are in demand. And seller's market would be like when these jobs are in demand. And like when you said, there's more jobs sitting open. It's the same thing with real estate. There's some houses that sit on the market now for a long time. But the high quality houses or the houses that are priced correctly will sell quickly. It's the ones that stay open are the ones that are either not desirable or they're priced too high. It's the same way for travel jobs. If they pay too low, you're not going to get a lot of interest from travelers. Or if it's an area that's not desirable, you're not going to get a lot of interest from travelers. But if you have a San Diego job that's paying $2,500 a week, it's going to go really fast because there's a lot of people that want that job. Just like if you had a really great house priced at $20,000 below the market value, it's going to go really fast because there's a lot of people that want that house. So the markets are actually very, very similar in that regard.
That's a really good analogy. For those of you that have kind of followed our story, actually, we have been searching for a house to buy for the last couple of years. We ended up actually putting our house search on hold, and we're renting a house right now because we just were having trouble finding what we were looking for. And, I had asked Jared, I'm like, it seems like there's so many houses available that are sitting on the market. There's so many that we could have moved on that just weren't desirable to us though. But every time we saw one pop up that fit like our exact criteria, it was gone like that because we were being very picky, because we're trying to find, a perfect forever home, one that's, not too close to the other houses, has a little bit of land, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas if we just wanted a cookie cutter house in a neighborhood that looks like just all the others, like there's a dozen of those in this neighborhood, in that neighborhood. So you guys kind of have to think about that with how particular you're being with your job search. We're saying there's hundreds of jobs all across the country. You're in high demand. But if you're saying, I only want to be in San Diego, I only want outpatient one-on-one, and I need to start, February 1st, and I want to make $2,500 or more. Well, you're being a little bit too picky. Those jobs are unicorn jobs. And if a $2,500 outpatient one-on-one San Diego job pops up, there's going to be 1,000 applicants. Whereas if a 2,500 skilled nursing Kansas job pops up, there's going to be like 2 applicants, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to think about supply and demand there, depending on what your particular search criteria is. But in general, there's a ton of good jobs out there. You can definitely find good jobs in desirable locations. They might just be more competitive. So what one of the recruiters was emphasizing here, as far as the job market, you're going to have more competition for those desirable jobs. So you need to be quick on your toes for those. You need to have your resume ready, your application ready. You need to have your relationship already established with your recruiter so that they can get you in the door as quick as possible. You can't just be sitting back on the sidelines watching the job boards. And we've talked about strategy with this before. A lot of you guys will search just the travel therapy job boards and you're just kind of sitting back waiting. Quite often, by the time you have the opportunity to inquire about a job on a job board, you're not going to have enough time to get your paperwork all in and get established in order to apply for that job and get it.
Yeah, you have to remember that if a really desirable job pops up on a job board, there's a lag there. It takes a little while for it to get posted. And by the time it's posted, anyone that was already working with a recruiter that was looking for that same job would have already been submitted to the job before you ever even see it's available. So you have to keep that in mind that like if there's something you really want, something very specific, if you wait around on a job board to find it and it's something that's desirable, it's going to be gone. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to get in contact with the recruiter. The recruiter's going to say, okay, fill out this stuff. By the time you're done with that, then they're like, okay, that job's filled, but I have these jobs, and now you're back in the same boat that you would have been. Mm-hmm. So have a relationship with a few recruiters, tell them what you want so that they can send you that job as soon as it pops up instead of you that lagged, we know how it is. We have a job board as well. If a job pops up, say on Tuesday morning, sometimes it might not be posted for us until Wednesday afternoon. So anybody that was really looking for that job, it might go very quickly.
Yep. So that's why we always emphasize get the ball rolling early by talking to a few different recruiters and establishing a relationship first. So if you're somebody who's watching this and you're thinking about getting started in 2026, we recommend starting to talk to recruiters about 2 to 3 months out from your start date. So it's almost the end of, we'll call it basically it's February now, February 1st. If you're looking to get started in April, May, June, now is a great time to go ahead and start talking to recruiters. If you're looking for February or March, right now, you need to be talking to recruiters right now. Because it is a good idea at least 8 weeks in advance to get them your resume and your skills checklist and your references and all those things so that they can just be sitting on go, ready to submit your application when those hot jobs pop up. So reach out to us if you are thinking about getting started and we can help you. So that goes for new grads that are graduating in May. Now is a good time to go ahead and reach out, or therapists that are current clinicians that are thinking about getting started. You can fill out our recruiter recommendation form and we'll send you 3 recommended recruiters that you can go ahead and talk to and decide if they're a good fit for you and get the ball rolling that way.
You want to answer this question? It's kind of along the same lines.
Yeah, actually, I saw that Jazzy, I think it's Jazzy on Instagram had a question about a particular setting. She wants to know about pediatric Jobs, and we're actually getting ready to talk about settings as well, but she wants to know if we have any companies we recommend that work with peds. Yes, we actually know quite a few companies that work with peds. The majority of the peds jobs that you're going to see are going to be in the school setting, but you will occasionally see other pediatric jobs like pediatric outpatient or pediatric inpatient. It's just not quite as common as schools, but we have a lot of companies that do a lot of school contracts and then some other peds settings as well.
The main thing to remember with any setting that you want to work in is that it depends on what area of the country you're looking for, because we know companies that specialize in schools and pediatric settings, but a lot of them only have jobs in certain areas, or they'll be more focused in certain areas, like maybe around where they are. So it always helps to reach out to us, fill out our recruiter recommendation form, tell us, I'm looking for pediatrics in Texas or whatever, and then we can make much more informed recommendations to you.
Right, yeah, and then I also don't know what your discipline is, so that would be helpful. So Jazzy, if you want to fill out that recruiter recommendation form on our website, or you're on Instagram, so you can just click on the link in our bio, and then I'll take a look at what you're looking for and offer recommendations.
Yep. Okay, so the next question we asked is, what settings currently have the highest demand for each discipline? So for PT, pretty overwhelmingly, the different companies said that outpatient is the most high demand, followed by skilled nursing, and then after that would be home health and hospital-based. For OT, the highest demand is by far skilled nursing, followed by schools and hospital. For SLPs, schools, followed by skilled nursing and hospital. So it always depends on your discipline and everything, but like we kind of talked about earlier, PT, outpatient is just insane right now. And the outpatient market is almost kind of carrying the PT job demand. Like there's a lot of outpatient jobs open. And like we've talked about before, if you just got into travel in the last 3 or 4 years, you might think that that's how it always is. There's always just a lot of outpatient jobs, but that's not the case. And when we started traveling, there was very few outpatient jobs. I would bet you there was probably less than 100 outpatient jobs in the whole country when we started traveling for PTs. And in some cases, there was even significantly less than that. We would look in states and there would be like 1 open outpatient job or 0 open outpatient jobs. So these things are cyclical. It used to always be skilled nursing was the most in demand, followed by home health, and then hospital, and then probably outpatient was 4th, and now outpatient is 1st. So things change quite a bit. If you stay in the industry long enough, you'll see, buyer's markets, seller's markets. You'll see all the disciplines in demand. But right now, outpatient is very high demand for PTs.
Yeah. So PT, outpatient, SNF, followed by home health and hospital. OT, primarily skilled nursing, but then also some demand in schools and hospitals and other settings. SLPs, by far the highest demand is school SLPs. And for those of you that are not familiar, you can work in a school for just part of the year. Sometimes they prefer if you could work the full school year, but you can do 1 semester. So for right now, coming into February, March, sometimes they're going to go ahead and be hiring for next school year. In the upcoming months, we're going to start to see 2026, 2027 school year jobs. So if you're thinking about looking at a school contract for next year, you're almost at that time where they're going to start listing them. And then there are medical settings for SLPs as well, skilled nursing, hospital, etc.
Nick says, hello from historic Prescott, Arizona, Old West vibe. Nick, is it, we haven't seen you on here in a while. Is it pronounced Prescott or is it Prescott?
I think I've heard people say Prescott.
I've heard people say Prescott too. It sounds really weird.
It sounds weird, but yeah. Speaking of pronouncing things, I refuse to call Colorado, even though I know the people from there say Colorado. The other day I made a video about the PT Compact update, and Nevada is the newest one to join, but I know people call it Nevada, but I have to say Nevada, so I don't know. It's probably regional on how you say these things.
Yeah,
but
I think so.
Anyway. All right. Nick says a lot of good outpatient jobs, good paying outpatient jobs in Arizona. Good to know, Nick.
Yeah, and you're avoiding all the snow right now.
Mm-hmm.
I shoveled for 4 hours today. So.
Allie says, good day. Here we go. Sorry, I pressed something.
All right.
Yes, speaking of that, we were concerned that our power was going to be out. We're still not out of the woods. The power still could go out, but we got hit a little bit by the storm. So thinking of you guys that got hit worse than us, especially those of you like down in Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, those areas, it didn't hit us too bad. We got a few inches of snow and some sleet, and we'll see what the ice does. But this new house that we've been living in is a little closer to the mountains. In Virginia, where we live in the Blue Ridge Mountains, it's a little bit further up the mountain. So we've had a lot more issues with power outages when there have been storms over the last few months since living here. So we've been really concerned about our power going out. So fingers crossed that it doesn't go out this time. Our neighbors told us that last year they had a time where the power was out for like 2 or 3 days. And we have a baby now, so that's more concerning for us. So fingers crossed that the power doesn't go out. But yeah, we were glad we were able to do tonight's video and thinking of you guys that were hit worse than us.
Yep. Next thing we asked was, are there any certain locations or states that have a lot more job openings currently? This is something that we get a lot of questions about. People often ask, like, you know, what states they should get licensed in. Not as much now for PTs because there's like 40 states in the compact, but that used to be a big thing. It's like, what state should I get licensed in? Because which states have jobs and all that. So the top states currently for most companies, they said California, followed by Washington, followed by Massachusetts, particularly for winter needs for Massachusetts. And then some other states that were also mentioned and pretty high demand were Oregon, Virginia, Maryland, Texas, Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, Illinois, and Missouri. So yeah, California has been at the top of the list for the entire time we've been travel therapists. So for over 10 years, I would say consistently, California is number 1. So if there's only one state you want to get licensed in, and say you only want to work in one state ever as a traveler, it would probably be California. You could just travel up and down California endlessly.
And we know a lot of travelers that do that.
Yeah.
That only work in California. We were on our road trip in 2020 in California. We met some other travelers there, and they were telling us that they only work in California, and they like laughed at us and just could not fathom how we had never taken a job in California because they just didn't understand. Like, they only work in California.
Yeah.
We have some friends there that like they move as like a group of like 4 to 6 of them, just like find a good contract, and then the rest of them come work there. So I don't know what these clinics are like out in California. They just employ like dozens of therapists. They must be huge.
Yeah. There's some outpatient clinics there that will use like 10 travelers at a time. So yeah, and California also pays really well for most contracts. You just have to remember that cost of living can be higher, taxes are going to be higher, but yeah, California is a pretty good state to be licensed in if you're rolling your pick one.
Later on, one of the recruiters, as far as giving advice, was talking about making sure to apply for your California license in advance. So we always want to reiterate this. We usually recommend that you have your license in hand before applying for jobs. And this is especially the case for California because they do take a while to process their licenses, and you have to take a jurisprudence exam and you have to get fingerprinting done for that state. So it's a bit of a process. So if you do want to work in California, get that license started a couple of months before you anticipate beginning. You can't just really apply for a travel job in California and then get a license. It's not going to work that way.
Yep.
But as you mentioned about the compact, there's almost 40 states participating in the PT compact. So if your home state is in the PT compact, that's really helpful for you. They also did just finally implement the OT compact, I think in 3 states so far. And so hopefully they'll be rolling it out in more states soon. They've been waiting on that OT compact for like 5 years.
We made a video, I think it was in 2019, talking about the OT compact, and I think we said that it was supposed to go live in like 2021.
I think it was 21 is what they were saying,
and
now it's 26, and 3 states are participating. So hopefully they'll have it soon. And then I haven't heard any updates lately about the SLP compact, but hopefully that'll be coming soon. But again, we always want to reiterate, you do not have to be a compact member to be a travel therapist. It just takes a little more legwork for you to apply for your licenses, but it's not a huge deal if you can't use it. We've actually never used the compact. All
right, so the next thing we asked about was changes in rates. So we wanted to see if there was any significant change in rates that people have seen. Something else we also often get asked about is like, you know, how do the rates compare to 5 years ago? How do they compare to a couple years ago? How are they changing? Are they going up or going down?
Yep. So the majority of the companies said that the rates are level or steady. A lot of them kind of use the word like normalized because we had some higher rates around like 21 and 22 after the pandemic, but now it's kind of come back down and it's just normal. But I'd say they're still higher on average than they were when we started in 2015.
Yeah, they're, I would say on average probably about 25 to 30% higher than they were 9 years ago, or even probably like 2018 or 2019. So what was that, 7 or 8 years ago?
Yep, and then there were some instances where they think the rates are really up, especially in certain rural locations where they're really in need of a therapist. Some of them are raising the rates to get people in the door. There's some school contracts that are paying really well, depending on the area. And then they also mentioned that if you can find contracts that are what are considered direct contracts, where the agency has a direct contract with the facility, those are going to usually pay better versus the ones that go through the VMS. or the vendor management system, because the vendor management system takes out a fee and that cuts into your pay. So if you can work with an agency that has a lot of direct clients, you're going to keep more money.
Yep.
A couple of them also did mention that certain clients are paying less for new grads. We've heard this before, but this is kind of something good to remind you of, that some facilities will pay less for a new grad because they anticipate you needing more training or not being able to carry the same caseload as someone who has more experience.
Yeah, and there used to be this thing, I don't know if it's still going around, but people in groups used to say, and this was when we were new grads, they would say like, new grads shouldn't make less money, you build the same amount of money for the same services, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, I understand that when we were new grads, we thought the same thing, but as you work more and you see different people in these different facilities, it makes sense that new grads would probably get offered a little bit less, because a lot of times you need more time, like ramp up. You a lot of times have a lower caseload to start with. You have a higher chance of having issues with the caseload or with patients. It's just a more known commodity when the person has, say, 10 years of experience versus a new grad. So you can't blame companies for wanting to pay a little bit less to a new grad that they think they might have to train more than an experienced clinician. So it has nothing to do with how much you can bill or any of that. It just has to do with the fact that on average, new grads are going to have more difficulty than an experienced clinician will have.
Yeah, and I've also heard some facilities and recruiters talk about just more risk associated with hiring a new grad, because they have seen time and time again, sometimes new grads will get into it and then they just are overwhelmed, or it's not working out, and they end up either the new grad quits or they need to cancel their contract because it's not going well.
Or they need to adjust their caseload down so that they can do it.
Yeah. So this isn't the case across the board. Sure, some jobs you're going to get offered the same rate, or you can even negotiate higher as a new grad. It's very facility dependent, but just don't be super surprised if you do hear that. It's not them trying to screw you over or whatever. It's true. Like, it happens sometimes.
And, you know, you might be listening to this as the best new grad clinician that has ever existed, or a student that knows everything. And you might say, well, that's not me, but you have to think about the averages. There's a lot of people that graduate that do need help, or they're a little slower, or they have more time. It takes them more time to get adjusted to a documentation system, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And so if you're a clinic owner or a manager and you're hiring based on the averages, you have to understand that new grads are on average are going to need more help.
Yeah. So you might find that. But we don't want to deter you also if you are a new grad. We're going to talk about new grads a little bit more specifically here in a few minutes, but like, if you are a new grad, we traveled as new grads. We mentor a lot of people that travel as new grads. Yeah. You can absolutely travel as a new grad. We just want you to know what you're doing, be prepared. If you feel as though you need more mentorship, that's fine. There are facilities out there that are going to offer more mentorship, but you can't have it all necessarily. Just like we talked about with being really particular about settings and locations. If you're someone who feels like you do want to travel, but you still would like to have some mentorship, then work closely with your recruiter, and we can help connect you with recruiters that do well with this, to identify facilities that are willing to give you more training and ramp up. Just know that that could mean that you're going to make a little bit less the first couple contracts, but it's still probably going to be way more than you'd make at a perm job. Yeah. And then once you get your foot in the door, you get a little more confident. Now you can go after some of those really high paying contracts and those really desirable locations. But we usually recommend going with like a more rural location for your first job, because it's usually a slower pace. The productivity and caseload requirements are less, and you can feel more confident and ramp up as a clinician while still getting paid really well. So you can definitely do it as a new grad. You just need to, like, tailor your expectations.
I guess one other thing to add about this, not to beat a dead horse, but there are situations where, say, a facility has a job opening and it's a direct client, and say it's a travel company that has a bunch of recruiters, and all the recruiters are submitting people to this job, right? If you're a new grad, there are situations where the recruiter might offer the facility, basically they'll say, we'll take less money if you'll take this new grad over an experienced clinician. And that just makes you more competitive as a new grad. So it's like, okay, if the facility had to pay the same amount for an experienced person or a new grad, almost always they're going to take the experienced person, because on average they're going to have less issues. But if they could take the new grad for $200 a week less, then maybe they would consider that. So there are situations where there's really good facilities where your recruiter might actually say, like, hey, would you be willing to take less to make you more competitive for this job? And depending on your situation, maybe that's yes, maybe it's no, but just know that that does happen sometimes.
And this, I see a lot of people obviously when you come out of school, we all have a lot of student loans, right? We really want to make top dollar, right? But I do think you need to be realistic with yourself and with your recruiter on where does it rank with your priorities, okay? So of course, we're all going to want to say, let's make the top pay. So when your recruiter's asking you about what's important to you, you might say, well, high pay because I have student loans to pay off, right? But I think what's most important is being successful as a clinician, having a good experience. So what's most important, especially your first couple jobs, is that you don't get yourself into a bad situation, that you have to quit or they fire you or you get really overwhelmed and are questioning your choices to become a therapist or become a traveler or whatever it is. So I think what's most important as a new grad is that you get yourself in a good situation and then put pay second after that for your first couple of assignments. So try to go in prioritizing finding a good clinical environment and a good setting that's a good fit for you so that you're going to be successful and do well that first contract. And then prioritize pay the second, third, or fourth contract.
And, you know, like Whitney said, we started traveling as new grads as well. Knowing what I know now 10 years later, and even me as an experienced clinician, I would rather take a contract that was a really good contract paying $300 a week less than a mill outpatient contract that was paying $300 a week more. And as a new grad, and if I'm advising a new grad, I would say that's the case tenfold. Like, take the good paying or the good situation contract where you make less money over the one that is high volume but you make a lot of money. You're always going to have a better experience there. And that $300 a week, even though it seems like a lot, to go home like upset and miserable every day, it's not worth it.
Yeah. And again, this is just for the beginning to make sure that you're feeling really confident. But, once you do feel confident and you feel good about it, and you know that you can handle those higher caseloads or whatever it might be, and you want to go chase that high pay, then do it. Some people are like, you know what, I don't care if I'm seeing 18 people a day because I know I'm going to make, $2,500, $2,800 a week and I can pay off my student loans fast. I'm willing to do it. That's great. But I just think for your first couple of contracts, try to find an ideal clinical environment for you just till you kind of get your feet wet and learn the ropes and make sure that it's the right move for you before chasing after those really high paying contracts.
Yep. Okay, so the next thing we asked about was actually our new grads having luck getting placed. Pretty much all the companies said yes, but like we've said, and if you talk to any recruiter, they'll tell you this as well, it always depends. PTs are most likely to be able to travel as a new grad. OTs, it's a little more challenging, and that's just a product of the job market. You saw those job numbers earlier. PTs have 3 or 4 times as many jobs open as OTs do. So based on those numbers, there's going to be more clinics that are going to be willing to take a new grad or going to be willing to have that longer ramp up period that a new grad might need versus OTs that have less job openings. And for SLPs, especially for CFs, that's mainly only in schools. We've talked about this quite a bit in the past. There's a lot of SLP CFs that want to travel during their CF year, and that can be really difficult if you're working in any other setting besides schools because you need 9 months, and school is perfect for that. Whereas if you're trying to go to like 3 different skilled nursing, it makes it very difficult. So we would pretty much not recommend that SLPs travel during their CF year unless they're going to do schools, and even then, it can be difficult to find a good school to go to.
Yeah, you have to have your supervision hours, and so they have to make sure to match you at a facility where there's someone that can provide you that required supervision, and as a traveler, that may not always be the case. So it can be harder during your CF year. Every SLP that we've ever talked to says we recommend if you are going to do it during your CF year, do it in a school. Otherwise, they recommend just waiting until after you get your C's. And then once you have your C's, you can work in any setting. But as an SLP CF, it's a little bit harder.
So for any new grad, it's always easiest to get placed in skilled nursing or school if you don't have experience. There are some outpatient contracts and some home health that are willing to train, but just as a general rule, skilled nursing and schools are willing to take people without experience usually. Yeah. On the other hand, it's very hard if you're a new grad or you don't have experience to get contracts in home health or like big hospital systems. So home health, like I said, home health is like kind of a dichotomy, I would say. There's some home health agencies that are high paced. They don't want anybody that doesn't have experience. They want you to be able to do documentation quickly. There's other home health agencies that are desperate that will take new grads and they're willing to train because they just need somebody there to take the job. So
and usually that's going to be the more rural places.
Yes, for sure. So if you're taking a home health job like in a desirable area, it's going to probably be difficult to take that as a new grad. Whereas if you're taking a home health job in a rural area, they'll be much more willing to train you. So if you want to get in as a new grad, it's often difficult to get into high demand outpatient or home health. Also, big hospitals, they usually want experience. That makes sense. You're working with pretty vulnerable patients. They want you to be knowledgeable. And then also some certain outpatient clinics will often require experience, and they don't want to take new grads or people that haven't worked in outpatient before. And this actually happened to me. I think I'd only had like 3 months of experience. I interviewed for an outpatient clinic, and they didn't take me because it was a sports medicine clinic, and they really wanted somebody with experience, and wasn't a good fit. So that happens, and but
I think that's the only job we ever got passed over for.
Yeah, I think it was the only one.
Yeah, I think every other job we've ever interviewed for, if we wanted it, we got it. But as a new grad at that like pretty desirable sports med outpatient, back in 2015, they were like, we can get a better candidate than a new grad with 3 months of experience. So.
Yeah.
Actually, wasn't that your first job? You might not even have experience.
Yeah,
maybe our first job. So
I can't remember.
Anywho, there are going to be some facilities out there that won't take new grads, but for the most part, you can definitely find the ones that will take new grads. Often you're going to have more luck in rural locations, but that's not always the case, especially for PTs. You might find some really desirable ones. But it does help, I would say, as a new grad in general, to be somewhat flexible on location and or setting to have the most job options available to you.
Yep. Okay, the next thing we asked about was any change in contract cancellations. So in these kind of buyer's markets, I would say, where there's a huge demand for therapists, there's often few cancellations, and that's what we're seeing right now. So back when we started and there was less jobs open, you would see cancellations fairly often. I would say 5 to 10% of contracts might get canceled. Now the cancellation rate is much lower than that, and the reason is because these facilities, even say it's not a perfect fit, say you're not as quick as they want you to be, whatever, a lot of cases they don't want to cancel your contract because they know it's going to be very hard to find someone else to fill it. So cancellation rates are very low, and that is basically a product of there being a lot of open jobs and not that many therapists looking for the jobs.
Yep. So we're almost done here with everything we wanted to cover for the video. We have a couple of just like general comments that we got from some of the recruiters that we're going to share. But before we wrap up, if you have any questions for us, if you're watching live, feel free to just leave those in the comments now and we'll answer any of your questions. And again, just to reiterate, if you guys are looking to get started in 2026, we would love to help you. We've mentored thousands of therapists at this point to help them get started. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, our podcast at Travel Therapy Mentor, our website, traveltherapymentor.com. You can check out our hot jobs list to see some of the current openings available from the recruiters that we work with. And then also you can fill out our recruiter recommendation form at traveltherapymentor.com/recruiters. And we'd love to help personally get you connected with some recruiters that would fit well for your situation and your preferences. Yep. But yeah, leave any questions in the comments. Hit the thumbs up button if you learned something or enjoyed our video.
All right, so just some general insights that the recruiters or the company owners wanted to share with you guys.
I think we already mentioned a couple of these. Yeah. If applying for a job in California, you need the license in hand before applying.
That is just because California is not part of the compact, and California takes a long time, so you don't want to apply for a job and not have a license, and then it takes you 2 months, and it can be an issue.
Yeah. For new grads, be as flexible as you can on settings and locations. Each contract may not be your dream assignment, but it could help you land your next one, and you could also look at each assignment as a resume builder. It could help you identify settings and locations that you do and don't like. It's important to keep an open mind. I think that's a great point about identifying things that you do and don't like. So we've taken a lot of jobs over the years that wouldn't have necessarily been our first choice, especially like in location. And we were surprised to find out some places that we never knew existed and ended up liking. Whereas if we had only just ever gone to our top choices, you never would have found those hidden gems. So
yeah, one of those places we strongly considered moving to, living in. So
yeah, in Eastern North Carolina, we'd never heard of it before. We ended up going back there twice for 2 different assignments and extending. Considered going perm there, made some really good friends there, and had never heard of this place in our lives. So be open-minded when it comes to finding travel jobs, and it doesn't always have to be like in the city or the exact location that you anticipated, because imagine, on the weekends you can drive places and see things. It doesn't have to be exactly in the city that you thought you wanted to be in. And same thing for settings. Jared took one of his first jobs, we've talked about this before, as a new grad in the hospital, and he never would have thought he was going to work in the hospital, but that gave him a unique experience that he never thought he would have, and he actually didn't hate it.
Yeah.
And now he has that under his belt.
Yep. Okay, somebody else said excited for the OT Compact to be rolling out. Also, we're seeing an increase in PTA jobs and placements. We've seen that as well. A lot of the PTAs that have reached out to us recently, we see them getting placed in jobs. So, yeah, a lot more PTAs getting placed. It's good. I will say the job market and options have never been better. Having said that, I'm seeing a very fast-paced market, meaning travelers need to know what they want and be decisive and act quickly. This comes from someone that works primarily with outpatient clinics. So that's like we said, if it's a high demand job, it's going to move quickly. Just like it's a high demand house, it's going to get a lot of offers. If it's a low demand job, then you can be more flexible. You can negotiate, all those things. So just keep that in mind. Like if there's something specific you want and a lot of other people also want it, just like a house, you have to be ready to jump on it and pay the higher price.
Another company was saying we expect another solid growth year in therapy across the board. So they're really expecting their therapy division, the need for therapists to still be there this year.
Yep. This recruiter emphasizes that travelers should carefully vet companies and honor their professional commitments. So something that some recruiters have mentioned to us recently is about travelers being double submitted for jobs. And we've talked about this a lot in the past. I think probably a lot of you guys know what that is, but say you're working with 3 different companies like we recommend, and a VMS job pops up that all 3 companies have. There are some travelers will just be like, they'll tell every recruiter just to submit them for any job that fits what they want. And that causes a lot of issues with these jobs where every company has the same job and all of them submit you to the same job. So be smart about that. Basically, what we usually recommend is like, don't have a company submit you for a job unless they send it, they tell you about it first, you say yes, and then they submit you. So that way you know that you're not applying for the same job through multiple companies. That causes a lot of headache for the company. It causes a lot of headache for the travel agency that you're working with. So, avoid that if at all possible.
Yeah, and so basically this one company was just reiterating that it can cause a lot of frustration for everybody involved. The recruiter, you, the facility. It's really best practice to try to only get submitted through one agency. And then also we usually recommend if you have already been submitted for a job through one agency and then you get an interview and an offer through that agency, but then in the meantime you find out that a second agency has the job for more money, we don't recommend that you switch agencies once you've already been submitted and had an interview through one agency. You can use it as a negotiating tactic. If you find out there's another company that could pay higher, you can come back to your original company and say, hey, I did find out this company can pay higher, try to see if they can match it. But they've already done a lot of the work and put in a lot of the effort to find you the job, submit you to the job, and get you the interview and the offer. So we think it's the most professional thing for you to do to stay with that recruiter. We have spoken to therapists that don't agree, don't care. They're chasing the highest money. They will drop that company and move on to the next to pay them more. That is your prerogative, but do keep in mind if you do that you're going to burn the bridge with the one company. They're not going to work with you anymore. They may blacklist you, and sometimes it will also cause issues with the facility itself.
Yeah, so just think about it's a short-term thing versus a long-term thing, right? So in the short term, you might make more money by doing that. In the long term, you're going to miss out on opportunities because you're going to have companies that don't want to work with you, recruiters that refuse to work with you. So, if it's a huge amount, okay, maybe you consider it. But if it's, $50 a week more, $100 a week more, like a lot of cases, your company can match it or, just say, oh, I should have negotiated on the front end. So that's what we always recommend is say it's a VMS job and all 3 recruiters that you're working with have that same job. Negotiate before you ever submit it, and then submit with the one that says they can pay you the most, right? So say it's listed at $2,000, and one recruiter says, "Oh, I can pay you $2,000. I can pay you $2,100. I can pay you $2,200." And then you say, "Okay, well, I'm going to take it with the $2,200." And then you tell the other companies, "Can you match that or beat it?" And then once one of the companies does, then you go with that company. You have them submit you. Don't submit for the job and then try to negotiate on the back end because it puts everything in limbo. Like then the facility's waiting and the companies are waiting and all your recruiters are trying to figure out what's going on, and it makes things a lot more difficult that way.
But unfortunately, sometimes you don't have time to do all that. It needs to be very fast sometimes with these jobs, especially the competitive jobs. So we usually recommend that you start building the relationships with the recruiters ahead of time to already kind of have an idea of who it is that you like and would prefer to work with. So that when they're telling you about jobs, it can be rapid fire sometimes. Sometimes we'd be at work on one contract and we're getting texts from the recruiter like, okay, I have this one. Can I submit you? Can I submit you? Sometimes it has to be fast. Not always, depends on what the job is.
Yeah.
But if it's really competitive, you want to be quick with it. You don't have time to be playing games and going back and forth trying to negotiate. You just want to trust that hopefully they have good pay, they have your best interest in mind, you've already established a relationship with them, things are moving well, and you can just say, yes, go ahead and submit me. All in all, we recommend that you just maintain professional relationships, have good communication and transparency. We always looked at it as like a long-term thing. We planned on being travelers for a while. We have been travelers for a while. We want to maintain good relationships. We don't want to burn bridges left and right. So if that's how you also feel about your career and your professionalism, hopefully you can find a way to navigate that professionally.
Yeah.
I think this next recruiter let's talk about some of those same things about having mutual respect and communication with your recruiter. She wanted to reiterate that, the recruiters are real people too. Quite often they will sacrifice their nights and their weekends to talk with you because they know that you also have a schedule where you're at work during business hours, so you need to maybe chat with them in the evening or chat with them on the weekend. And some of them will make themselves available to you, and that's wonderful. But they also have families and lives too. So if they do schedule a call with you, keep the call. Don't just ghost them or disrespect their time by not picking up when they do call.
Yeah, and always. So say it's a company that consistently has lower pay, you don't ever want to work with this recruiter, instead of just like not answering their text anymore, just say like, hey, I appreciate your time. I've got other companies I'm going to work with, but thank you. And they will appreciate that so much more than you just not responding to their text, because now they don't know, did they just not get it? Are they busy? And they keep texting you. Like just be professional and send them a text and like a breakup. Just, this isn't going well. It's not a good fit for me, whatever. And they'll appreciate that.
Yeah, and trust me, they hear it all the time. There's a ton of competition out there. I mean, something that we were hearing over and over from the recruiters is that there's a lot of competition right now. There's so many agencies and so many recruiters that are trying to get your business as the therapist, right? And so they get it. They know that you're talking to a lot of recruiters. They just want you to be transparent and honest with them. And if you're like, hey, I appreciate your time. However, I'm gonna work with this other company, and I don't need to hear from you again. Just let them know. They get it. It's fine. So yeah, reach out if you have more questions about that. We have some articles and videos where we've talked about how to professionally navigate working with different recruiters. But just keep in mind that they're not just salespeople, right? Like, sure, some of them seem like just salespeople, but most of them really want to have a solid relationship with you and hopefully earn your business and work with you throughout your travel career. It really is a career, right? Like this is, you may be somebody who just takes one travel job, but a lot of us travel for many years and we build good relationships with our recruiters. So we do recommend trying to be professional with them if you can.
Yep.
And I think the last thing that this other recruiter had mentioned is they really are fighting for you to get you the best possible pay and earn your business. And I do think that that's true, again, of these recruiters that want to build relationships and have a long-term thing going on with you. They're not going to try to screw you over with pay because they want to keep your business for the next contract and the next contract and the next contract. So hopefully if you've gone through us and gotten recommendations for our recruiters, we've personally vetted them for you and they're trustworthy and they want to continue to be part of our Travel Therapy Mentor community. So they want to, serve you guys that work with us well. So they're probably not gatekeeping the pay or, trying to screw you over. They probably are offering you the best pay up front. So you don't even really have to negotiate that much. You can always say, something we recommend saying is there any more room to add more to my weekly pay? Or do we have any room to negotiate here on increasing my stipends? Push them, nudge them a little bit to see if there's any more pay or if there's some way they can move things around to get you more money. But for the most part, they're pitching you their best rate up front.
Yeah, and one of the recruiters also mentioned about how the margins are tighter than ever, and we've definitely seen that. That's not just something people are saying, but because there's so much competition right now, and there's so many jobs open and so few therapists, the competition between travel companies has increased, and that means that they're offering higher pay off the bat, whereas like probably 10 years ago when we started, they would offer you a low number to begin with, especially people that were not working with more than one recruiter, because there was a chance that you would take it. So say they offered you $1,400, but they could actually pay you $1,600. Well, if you took it for $14, they're making a lot more money, right? That doesn't happen nearly as much anymore. And a lot of that is because of people like us that send all of our leads out to 3 different companies. So they know that there's going to be competition. There's not just going to be, I'm your only recruiter, I offer you a number, you take it. they know that you have other people saying like, oh, they're only gonna pay you 19, I can pay you 22, and then you're gonna be done with them. So that doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to. The whole lowballing thing, that was huge 10 years ago. It's not so big anymore. Like there's a lot more competition.
Yeah, so you don't have to just be sitting there thinking that, oh my gosh, they're screwing me over. You know, trust that they are trying to work with you. They want to earn your business. They want to earn your business long term. So they're probably giving you their best pitch up front, but definitely nudge them. Definitely ask. Ask, is there any more room to increase the pay package? Do you think the facility would give us more money? Are you able to adjust the margins? Could there be an extra reimbursement we could throw in there? Is there any way I can get a little bit more money? Ask them.
Yeah.
But if they say no, I mean, it's usually no. So yeah. All right, we did get another question here on Instagram. I just signed a contract for Anchorage in April. That's awesome. Congrats. You guys had talked about your experience there. Did you say that housing was tough to find?
Yeah, housing was very tough to find. In Anchorage, you probably have the best chance of finding housing of anywhere in Alaska, but Anchorage was still hard. I think we asked about a bunch of different places on Furnish Finder. We looked on Airbnb. We eventually ended up renting a place that was like significantly more expensive than we wanted to pay. It was a 4-bedroom house and it was just the two of us, but there wasn't that many options, especially in nice areas. So yeah, be careful too, because not all places in Anchorage are nice. There's some places that are definitely kind of sketchy, and we didn't really realize that.
Yeah, I think North Anchorage was like generally a little more sketchy. We stayed in South Anchorage. That was really nice. The fact that you're going in April should help you. We didn't start till
I think it was May.
And so it was definitely more competitive to find summer housing. But if you can find something that starts a little earlier, hopefully in April you can secure something. Check Furnish Finder, check Facebook groups. We ended up ultimately finding something through a Facebook group.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully good luck with that. We have a lot of content that we did about Alaska, so check out we have articles about it, videos and podcasts about our experience in Alaska and logistics.
Yeah, but anyway, you'll have a great time once you find housing. Alaska's amazing. We miss it all the time.
Yep. Definitely the best assignment and best summer. There's so many things to do, and there's just a really big traveler community too. You're going to find a lot of other therapists there to hang out with and do things with. So.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. If there are no more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up tonight. Hopefully this video was helpful and informative for you if you're thinking about getting into travel therapy or if you're a current travel therapist. Again, feel free to send us a message, an email, reach out through our website if you want help getting started. If you have any follow-up questions.
Yep. All right. Take care, everyone.